Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. With U.S. President Donald Trump set to visit South Korea ahead of the APEC summit in Gyeongju, questions are resurfacing about a possible return to U.S.-North Korea diplomacy. No working-level talks are underway, but Kim Jong-un has opened the door if Washington drops what he calls its fantasy of denuclearization. At the same time, Pyongyang is drawing closer to Moscow, and South Korea is stepping up its own military posture. Tonight, we assess what has changed and what hasn't in the standoff on the Korean Peninsula. For this, we invite Myong-hyun, Senior Research Fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy, here in the studio with us. A big welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
And also joining us online is Mark Barry, Associate Editor Emeritus at the International Journal on World Peace. Good to see you, Dr. Barry.
And happy to be with you both.
So let's start a discussion with Dr. Go first. So the APEC Gyeongju, of course, it's just days away. How would you interpret the renewed speculation around a possible Trump-Kim meeting, and what would it signal?
Well, first of all, at the most basic level, both Kim Jong-un and President Trump have expressed interest and willingness to engage in dialogue with each other. They expressed that they still have good feelings about each other. So in that sense, the most basic requirement for a meeting is already there, the willingness to sit down together and then discuss. But at the same time, I think this reminds a lot of observers, as well as the media, about possible repeat of this flash meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un back in 2019 in Panmunjom. And I think this is the reason why there are already some reports that the Panmunjom had canceled group tours that was supposed to take place by the end of this month, which coincides with the visit of President Trump for the occasion of the APEC summit meeting in Gyeongju. So clearly there are not just speculations, but also minimum levels of preparation for this flash meeting to take place at any given moment. If in this case, it would be like up to North Korea to decide to come down to Panmunjom and meet with President Trump, because clearly President Trump is ready to have this meeting with Kim Jong-un. But having said that, though, I think what really makes this potential meeting to be realized, or the sufficient condition for this meeting would be for the United States to at least accept some of the prerequisites for dialogue that North Korea has been repeating over and over for several years by now, which is for the United States to accept North Korea as a nuclear state. So, but then that's not a given, and that's not President Trump, even though he made renewed emphasis for, and also highlighted his willingness to sit down with Kim Jong-un, has never stepped away from the U.S. government's position on North Korea, which is denuclearization. So, barring for a last-minute change of heart on the part of North Korea and Kim Jong-un, I think the chance of this flash meeting or flash summit in Panmunjom between Kim and Trump is pretty low for now. I would if I really make me say a number, I would say in terms of probability, it would be like 10% for now.
Because of the very clear
Exactly.
precondition that they've mentioned. Now, what about Dr. Barry? So, given that the White House hasn't ruled it out yet, and still, but there's no really working level contact has been confirmed yet, do you see this as a real possible diplomatic opening for both sides?
Well, we should remember in 2019, first of all, there were very thick and extensive contacts enabled by the President Moon administration, but you already had multiple visits by Mike Pompeo, both as CIA Director and Secretary of State. You had some very key people playing liaison roles. I remember Ambassador Sung Kim making many trips to Panmunjom. So it was a different ballgame then, but just the same, the actual amount of time between President Trump's tweet in June 2019 and the actual summit in Panmunjom was about 32 hours. So I don't think we should expect to hear anything for about a day and a half, no more than a day and a half before it happens. But something that's not being talked about is a very important wrinkle to all of this, which is the fact that barring any last-minute cancellation by President Xi of China, at least according to President Trump, they're expected to meet. And I presume the date would probably be October 30th. And if you're Kim Jong-un, and especially having been in the front row of the September 3rd Victory Day parade, you don't want to upstage President Xi. And if President Xi is coming, you have to be extremely careful what you do, how you do it, where you do it, when you do it. And if President Xi doesn't show up, well, that alters the calculations to another extent. So I think that's something that we don't recognize. It's for President Trump. Really, the only reason he's coming out to Asia, it's not for the ASEAN summit, it's not for APEC, it's to meet with President Xi, something that he had wanted to do for a long time. And at the same time, Trump is trying to rush back because next Tuesday, November 4th, are the 2025 elections. There's 2 governorships, there's 2 special congressional races, all of which are seen as a bellwether of the midterms in 2026. So for Trump, that's the topmost reason for him to return more quickly than he ordinarily ought to do with the APEC summit scheduled through the 1st of November.
Right. There would be more bigger priorities for President Trump, definitely. But we hear that, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, he said that if Washington actually drops its, quote, fantasy of denuclearization and accepts reality, there's no reason not to meet. So given this statement and the messages that Dr. Go and Dr. Berry has mentioned, how do you think we should look into understand, Kim Jong-un's such strong statement?
Well, I think North Korea knows full well that President Trump is not assigning high priority to the North Korean issue. So even though President Trump has expressed repeated his willingness to meet with Kim Jong-un, I think North Koreans have this concern that President Trump is trying to gain time, essentially playing for time, postpone the resolution of the issue for the remainder of his term, and somehow claim success just based on the optics that he's engaged in dialogue with North Korea. When it comes to the substantial issue of North Korea's denuclearization, or from the North Korean's point of view, setting North Korea as a nuclear state, that's a very complicated issue. And then I think North Koreans have this concern that President Trump is going to make use of this issue for his political gain, rather than solving it by investing his own political capital. So I think what North Koreans have as a baseline strategy is to essentially further augment their nuclear capability. And this is exactly what they're doing. But then at the same time, I think there's some temptation in some quarters of the North Korean leadership that President Trump represents a very unique opportunity for North Korea to make a huge strategic leap over South Korea by establishing a very strong relations and dialogue with the most powerful country in the world right now, which is the United States. So I think these 2 contradictory drivers. One is it's a safe strategy of essentially augmenting their physical capability of the nuclear state is being contradicted by this political temptation to reach out across the aisle and reach out to President Trump, because President Trump, at least, is open about talking to Kim Jong-un. So everything is really up to the North Koreans at the moment. The ball is in their court, and if they decide to take a gamble for another possible opening, then they will do it. But if not, they are not going to, I don't know, maybe they play safe. So again, the chance of a major breakthrough taking place this month is pretty low.
Mm-hmm. Now that brings us to a question that many are asking lately. So whether U.S. and South Korea are under the same table, whether their interests are aligned. Dr. Berry, how would you assess the South Korea-U.S. coordination on North Korea? Do you think both sides are still aligned on whether to engage Pyongyang or maintain pressure?
Well, I think on one hand, in terms of the nuclear issue, it's as if, as I've said many times, as if the Biden administration and the Yoon administration were still in power. There seems to be little change. But I think, as evidenced in the August meeting in the White House, President Lee recognizes that a change maker is President Trump, and the opportunity can come with his own personal relationship that could be rejuvenated with Kim Jong-un. I do think the summit in August went fairly well, but unfortunately, a couple weeks later, you had the whole matter in Georgia with ICE sending back well over 300 Koreans. And just talking to a senior retired New York news executive, television news executive the other day, that person told me that factory in Georgia will never be finished. It'll never open. He just thinks that that's the kind of the measure of how bad relations have become in just a few weeks after the August summit. So I think President Lee strongly supports, especially after the Sharm el-Sheikh summit with 20-plus world leaders that Trump and Egypt's President Sisi presided over. Trump, if nothing else, he has the power of convening, and he could bring together the top world leaders, European leaders, Muslim and Arab leaders. It was absolutely incredible. And I think they came, of course, not just because of President Trump, but because they sensed something much bigger was going to take place that was a once-in-80-year kind of change. But nonetheless, the world leaders recognize President Trump has the power of convening. And I think President Lee recognizes the same thing. But at the same time, I think it's going to be a last-minute possibility, if at all, of any kind of a meeting taking place, probably in the DMZ. And probably President Lee will have to recognize it's better that he not even show up. Not even create an issue, because the ROK DPRK relations are a little bit sour right now. But the purpose of the meeting should be to get reacquainted and to be able to say, let's meet again, whether it be in Pyongyang or maybe even Trump can invite Kim Jong-un to Hickam Air Force Base in Honolulu, Hawaii. There's all sorts of ways to think out of the box. But right now, we just have to see if Kim Jong-un even thinks it's worth taking a step forward at this time, given the events of the last couple of months.
Right, of course. We're just speculating as of the moment, and we'll really have to see until how things unfold until the last minute. But Dr. Berry, let's also turn to external dynamics. So North Korea and Russia deepen cooperation across military and energy sectors. We've been seeing that. How far and how long do you think this partnership could realistically go? And are we seeing the early stages of a durable strategic alliance between the two?
Nothing is durable with Russia. And the centuries of history, particularly of Russia's relations with Northeast Asia, definitely prove that. But that being said, I was actually quite gladdened to read from TASS that Russia may well help rebuild the electric grid and the energy infrastructure for North Korea, which is something that is just sorely needed. And we see small signs, of course, the bridge over the Tumen River that Russia is constructing. These are small but important steps forward. But right now, the function of North Korean workers is to primarily build drones, not to have their troops fighting in Kursk anymore. And one of the issues with the Tomahawk missile possibly being given to Zelensky, it may not happen, but that Tomahawks would find many of these drone factories at which North Korean workers work to be within range. And North Korean workers could be directly attacked and killed by Ukrainians if the Tomahawks were given and the permission granted to hit those kinds of targets. But in the long run, I believe that the relations with Russia are a lot less permanent than those with China, and that's why Kim Jong-un put so much stress on rebuilding the relationship with President Xi, because they share an 880-mile common border and a much of a common history of a strong, tried and true relationship. So it's anyone's guess, but at the same time, I think Kim Jong-un recognizes that if Trump is meeting Putin again for the second time and is about to meet President Xi, then he should get on the bandwagon. So that's why I have a little bit of optimism that somehow something will happen. If it doesn't happen around APEC, it may happen early next year.
Right, and we'll have to keep close tabs on that. Now, there's also evidence that North Korean cluster munitions have been modified and used by Russia in Ukraine. Dr. Go, what does this actually reveal about Pyongyang's evolving role in the global arms supply chains?
Well, it reveals that the North Koreans are more in touch with the Russians, especially when it comes to reflecting the battlefield conditions in Ukraine, almost in real time. The reason why this discovery of North Korean cluster munitions in Ukraine is very revealing is because these cluster munitions weren't used in artillery shells and a rocket, which North Koreans have already supplied Russia with. It was used in drones. So Russians are one of the. I mean, they have introduced widespread use of drones for offensive purposes, and then they are coming up with new tactics that employs drones to attack each adversaries. And what's interesting is that North Koreans have adapted this. In fact, these cluster munitions were manufactured in the year 2000 apparently, so it was manufactured 20 years ago, but North Koreans have adopted these munitions to be used in drones, which didn't exist when these munitions were manufactured 20 years ago. So this shows that the Russians and North Koreans are working very closely, and clearly Russians are passing to North Koreans the battlefield conditions, as well as the lessons of the ongoing war in Ukraine, so that North Koreans can somehow adapt their existing weapon systems and munitions for the Russian needs today. So I think this shows that North Koreans have moved on from just cleaning out their warehouses of old munitions and supplying to the Russians on a one-time basis to something that's more just-in-time, kind of a closer supply chain. So it's interesting that essentially the North Koreans have created an just-in-time supply chain for the Russians, and that I think is a remarkable level of cooperation that we're observing right now between Russia and North Korea.
A very concerning cooperation too. So if this actually will become confirmed, Dr. Berry, do you think would this violate UN Security Council resolutions or international law? And realistically, what kind of consequences could follow?
There was a convention signed in 2008 of which the United States and Russia and North Korea and a bunch of other nations like Brazil and I think India did not sign it. The U.S. position is that they are viable, useful, and important tactically weapons to be used, but the reason that they were banned and about 125 or so countries have signed on to that convention is because of what they call the dud factor. They don't, oftentimes the fuse doesn't go off because of the way these things land. And the dud factor is the smallest for the U.S., and I think that's one of the reasons the U.S. has not signed the convention. But it's the highest for Russia, and probably for North Korea as well. But it's not actually violating, to my understanding, and I'm not an international lawyer, but my understanding is it's not violating any Security Council resolutions. And as they're not signatories, Russia and North Korea, to the convention, then it's not violating international law. But frankly, I'm increasingly concerned that the nuclear program of North Korea is maybe less important to be alarmed about than North Korea's fast learning capacity to learn all about drones and what to do, what not to do, and how to build inexpensive munitions that could soon be a threat to any of its neighbors, not just South Korea, but even to Japan or to China. So it's becoming like a new North Korea that has a whole different outlook of what it can do, and it will not necessarily be reliant on unproven ability to deliver a warhead, halfway across the world. It will always be a concern, but much more palpably is the concern about drones and the application of things like the cluster munitions to the drones.
Right, it's definitely really concerning. And in fact, North Korea also upgraded its own capabilities as well. The revealing of the new Hwasong-20 ICBM. Dr. Go, how significant do you think this is, and what does this indicate about their long-range strategy?
It's more of a milestone in the history of North Korea's ICBM program than people give credit to. The reason is because North Koreans actually publicized the fact that this new ICBM uses significant quantities of composite materials. So essentially carbon fiber-based advanced materials that gives the advantage. I mean, has the advantage of giving lightweight for the missiles or rockets, so that the weight savings for the rockets can translate to a bigger payload. So now North Korea can carry much more heavier payload warhead, and as well as a much more robust and then resilient system for their intercontinental ballistic missiles. So I think this is another way the North Koreans are hinting at the fact that they probably have acquired or completed the development of multiple independent reentry vehicle, meaning MIRV, which are it's a warhead that can carry multiple. It's a payload that can carry multiple warheads in one single missile. So I think North Koreans essentially reached the highest level of ICBM development, and that means that the threat factor that these North Korean ICBMs represent have gone up by an order of magnitude. So the Hwasong-20 is in a way the closest to a game changer since North Koreans broke this limit on the missile ranges like 7 years ago. So in that sense, I think we should be very concerned about this development.
Right, clear advancement indeed. Now, following this, South Korea, we hear that South Korea is preparing to deploy the Hyunwoo-5 by the end of this year. Do you think it's really the right step towards deterrence, or do you think it could actually risk provoking the situation?
Absolutely. I think Hyunwoo-5 is like, in fact, a Korean response, South Korean response to North Korea's nuclear threat. Hyunwoo-5 is unique in the sense that its payload is huge. So if the North Korean ICBMs can carry a maximum payload of 1.5 tons, Hyunwoo-5 can take 6 times that, 9 tons of warhead. So, but the difference being that the North Korean ICBMs carries a nuclear warhead, whereas the Hyunwoo-5 carries a conventional warhead. But then I think the technology, the precision, as well as the size of the payload shows that the South Korea can effectively target North Korea's missile infrastructure. And I think the South Korean government is planning to roll out 200 of these Hyunwoo-5s. So I think, and the reason why these are 200 is because North Korea, in terms of geographic extent, is a very small country. So there are so many corners that North Koreans can hide their ICBMs in. And so that means that if South Korea can target all of those secret corners where North Koreans can conceivably hide their nuclear missiles, then that means that South Korea, theoretically speaking, can neutralize North Korea's nuclear threat, even before North Korea successfully can attempt to launch those missiles. So I think Hyunwoo-5 is actually a very effective response to the North Korea's nuclear threat, short of South Korea having a stronger extended deterrence or its own nuclear capability.
Right, so it seems to send a double message, like both capability and resolve to multiple audiences, especially North Korea, of course. Now, finally, before we conclude, so North Korea is advancing both its arsenal and its alignment with authoritarian powers. Dr. Berry, what core strategies do you think should guide Washington and Seoul heading into 2026?
Well, on the short term, I'm very concerned about the relationship between President Trump and President Lee. You know, Laura Loomer, the conspiracy theorist who helped get rid of National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and also the four-star general who was in charge of the National Security Agency, she has consistently said on Twitter, on X, that President Lee is a communist, that he's utterly pro-China, and that the president is persecuting MAGA supporters and Charlie Kirk supporters. And the reason this is important and why I bring it up is because every night that the president is in Washington or in Mar-a-Lago, she calls him up in the evening. It's a regular phone call, and he checks in with her. So when she says these things to him, you know, I'm not saying he fully believes them, but they influence him. And when he gets word from other people, whether they be former Speaker Newt Gingrich or other people Steve Bannon, whatever they may be telling him, directly or indirectly, this influences him. So I'm afraid there's going to be a rather icy meeting, a bilateral meeting, and that's what concerns me in the short term. But in the long run, I think President Lee is going to have to adopt the strategy of Canada, of European nations, of many other nations, which is directly to President Trump, you say yes, 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 but actually what you do in the long run is to reposition yourself and find alternative avenues to achieve your goals, because in the long run, it may be becoming more and more apparent that the United States is going to be less and less dependable. And it's not just an issue of President Trump, it's an issue of the trajectory that the American nation is now going as it gets to the mountain of 250th anniversary and beyond. The world has to become much more interdependent of its previous dependencies on the United States.
Right. So the Lee administration might have to look for another strategy moving forward. But,
over the next 5 years, right.
Over 5 years. I'm afraid we'll have to conclude our discussion here tonight. Dr. Berry, thank you so much for your insights.
Welcome.
And Dr. Go, of course, we really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Mm.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.